My name's Nita Lundquist, and I am Kyle Hess's sister, his only sister. I'm the oldest of the Hess family, and when I was 10 years old, he was born. And when he was born, he was very anxious to get here. I didn't watch the delivery of the birth or anything like this, but my mother said that he was her fastest delivery and also her biggest child. And he came very plump, and she said he always knew how to swim from the day he was born because he came out swimming. His arms were not moving. I mean, were moving and flying all over when he came out. He came with a total urgency from the time he was born, that he had to live life fast. Everything he had to do fast and quick. And he seemed like his mind was always into the unknown, always trying to figure out what to do or discover this or discover that. And one of the particular things that I remember with him as a child, being the oldest child, and his other brother was Hal, and he was 6 years older than Kyle. That's right. Anyway, he wanted to be outside a lot as a child, but he wouldn't stay. He wouldn't stay in the yard or do things. You know, we was always afraid that he was going to get away. So Mother fixed we had the long clothesline, and it was just strung from one end of the yard to the other, and it didn't cover too much of the yard. But so she said, now Kyle, because he ran away a lot, and we got lost and we couldn't find him. So she said, Kyle, you can go outside but I've made this darling little harness for you, and it'll fit right over his chest. And you can go up and down the clothesline and play all kinds of games. And he was always telling her that he would never do it again. You know, if he did something wrong, I will never do it again, Mommy, I'll never do it again. He could not pronounce his R's. Everything was muddo, featho, brotho. He just seemed like he couldn't get his R's out. But he had such a cute little way about him. He was always smiling and always happy, and he had such a twinkle in his eyes. He had these big brown eyes, and he just melted you from the day he was born. Now, my other brother had the blue eyes, but there was something about Kyle that he had, as he got a little older, he had a little patch of freckles right across his nose. And we always said that was his little angel spots. But inside, sometimes we thought he was a little devil because he was so into things. But this one day he went outside, and she hooked him to the clothesline. And he said that he would just be a good boy and he would stay out there, and we had things to do. And when we went out, he was gone. His clothes were all on the ground, his harness off, he had gone bare naked, gone. And so here we lived in the country by a great big full irrigation ditch, and animals all around, horses and cows and different things like this. And so we began to search and call and search and call, and we couldn't find him anywhere. Now we began to get very panicky. So we went up and down the ditch banks, just knowing that we were going to find him in the ditch upside down. And after we had gone up and down, we didn't seem to be able to find him, and all of a sudden he came floating underneath this one little bridge. Face down, we just knew he was dead. We lifted him out of the water, got him onto the ground, tried to work with him, and he came out spitting and coughing and getting water out of his lungs. And this was way before CPR or anything like this. And he just opened up his eyes, and he acted really surprised to see us all, but he was ready to go again. And we said, oh, Kyle, why do you do this? He had this sad, sad look on his face like, well, I didn't really mean to. He didn't say anything, but he just had this look. But I never do it again. Never do it again. And so this is the kind of life that he was always exquisite in. I mean, he always had to, he couldn't just settle down and do a few little simple things. He had this desire to explore and see everything. One day, this was when we lived in St. John, near Malad, about 2 miles out of Malad. And my dad was on a farm and milked a lot of cows. But one day, my other brother went down with him, took him down, and he went down to an orchard. And Hal asked him if he could take out or go down and help him pick apples, or be down there with him. He said, I'll take good care of him. And so we went down there, and I stayed home. And in this orchard, there was a lot of horses, but they were gone. They seemed like they weren't in sight. But when they saw my brother Hal up into the tree, knocking the apples down, it brought the horses down. And they were great big work horses, like this kind of hooves. And so Kyle was never afraid of anything, animals especially. So he was so tickled to see those horses, so immediately he ran up and put his arm around a horse's leg to give him a hug. And the horse, thinking that it was a dog, went like this to him and kicked back and opened up right there by, what is that called? I can't remember. But anyway, right there. And just opened that right up and knocked him out. And he was bleeding. Hal ran up the road as fast as he could, and got us. We come down, and Mother, now he was gray, and we just thought he was going to die right there. And she tried to get me to run up and call the doctor and tell him that she was going to bring him right into the hospital, emergency. And I was so upset, I was just crying and crying, and she had to slap me really hard in the face. I'll never forget it. And she said, Nita, you have to do this. Kyle is going to die. You have to do this. And so I ran up there and I called the doctor. The doctor worked on him in the operating room for quite a while, and he came out, and he was a family doctor, and he came out, and he told Mother, he said, I don't know how that little boy is still alive. But he said, it was right there by his temple. And just, if he had hit that one spot, but it was just a hair below it. But he said, now you're going to have to keep him. I've had to go in and swab it all out and clean all the manure and all the stuff out and give him a lot of different tetanus shots and things like this. Now your main thing is he's got a big gap right there. And so you're going to have to keep him very quiet. And if he falls again, it's just curtains for him. So we brought him home, and that was really, really hard to keep him down because he didn't realize it. It didn't seem to, I don't remember that it even knocked him, took any of the energy out of him. He just seemed to be still up and going. So we was watching him 24 hours, it seemed like. Another thing that I can remember that he really, it seemed like this one day we were, well, when Mother would have home teachers or visitors of any kind, and Kyle was there. He was just a little tiny guy, about 2. I don't know why he had this obsession, whether it's wanted to get Mother's attention or exactly what, but he would go into the bedroom and he would bring all of her underclothes and string them clear across the floor, just drag them along. Her bras, everything she owned. And it would embarrass her, especially with the home teachers. And afterwards she said, Kyle, you can't do that. Now, honey, when we have company, you can't go into Mother's drawers and get my clothes. And of course he would say, I will never do it again. Always, I will never do it again. I will be a good boy. And this is the way it was nearly all through his life. One time we were up to my aunt's, and we were inside my mother's sister, and we were inside their house. And Kyle was just out in the yard with the rest of the kids, and thought everything was going fine. And Uncle Wendell looked out of the window, and she said, "Oh, come here quick. Kyle's up in the tree. I don't know what he's going to do. He's way up there." And so before we could get out there, he was down on the ground, and he had flown out of the tree. But he didn't break anything. Picked him up. He kind of cried and whimpered, and he said, "Well, I was trying to be a boy, but I put out my wings, but they wouldn't fly." And down he went. So we were trying to explain to him that Heavenly Father didn't make him like a bird, that he will never have wings. And so it just kind of like all of our life, he was kind of this type of a person. Now, as he grew up, and we moved to Milo from St. John, we moved to Milo, and my grandma and grandpa, he wasn't too big then. He was about, I think when he was about 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old when he came to Milo. But I can remember my grandma and grandpa, my mother's parents, came up one day, and it was around Christmas time. And this was really cute. He loved Grandpa Lundberg. And Grandpa Lundberg was built an awful lot like Kyle. And I think Kyle would have been more like that. Kyle was very short, and he was kind of stubby. He wasn't fat as a child, but he was pleasingly, he wasn't built Twiggy. And, but Grandpa Lundberg was very short too, but Grandpa Lundberg he looked like a perfect little Santa Claus. And Grandpa had hands just like, kind of short, and that's how Kyle's hands were, just kind of short and stubby. But they were manly looking hands, but he didn't have long fingers. Well, anyway, this mother had asked, she knew he was coming up, so she had asked Grandpa and told the ward they needed a Santa Claus, and asked Grandpa if he'd be the, come and be the Santa Claus. And so they had a suit, and he put that on. Well, we took Kyle down to the party, and Santa Claus came, and the kids all came, and Kyle was kind of running around, and all of a sudden he came up and he pulled on Mother's dress like this and tried to get her attention. She was doing something, and he said, Motto, I need to talk to you." And she said, "What's the matter, Kyle? I'm talking." She got down, and he whispered to her, and he said, "That isn't Santa Claus. That's my Grandpa Lundberg." And he knew exactly that was Grandpa Lundberg. And she said, "How could..." that's my grandpa's hands. And he looked at him. And so she was afraid that Kyle was going to just absolutely blow the whole thing. So they just hurried the kids through. But first of all, she took Kyle out so he wouldn't blow it. But but anyway, he was very attentive on everything. I remember one particular time, Kyle was a person, as he grew up, he was a person that he wanted everybody to have fun, especially children. I remember one time we were down to, this was when they lived in Northern California, and we were going to a New Year's Eve or something to do with the holiday dancing. And yeah, I think it was New Year's Eve. And we were all ready to go. There was Hal and his wife, Pam, and they lived down there too. And so we had just come down, but so we were all ready to go. We go out the door, and Kyle said, "We're not going anywhere until we set up a party for these kids. They have to have a party." That was his kids and my kids and Hal's kids. So he got out the streamers, put them across the thing. Everything had to be perfect. He had and got things so they could have a good time. They were not just going to stay home and be babysitted. They had to have a party. I remember that. I remember it was like that nearly all of his life. If he came to my house with these kids, came to our house, my kids got so excited. He was like a Santa Claus and a Pied Piper, and oh, Kyle's going to come. Uncle Kyle's going to come. Oh, we're going to have fun. We're going to have fun. And that's just how he was. He just made fun. My Grandpa Lundquist was a lot like that. And so that's what I say. He had a lot of my grandpa's characteristics. And my grandpa and Kyle could be the most fun-loving, and they loved children. And they could do pranks. Both of them could do pranks and all kinds of crazy things. But when they were on the spiritual side, oh my gosh, they were both spiritual giants. I remember just the November before he died. He died in March. Remember coming down for Thanksgiving. And Max and I and all the children came. And Karen was upstairs. She was sick. We never really saw her too much. We didn't know what was wrong. But we found out afterwards she was expecting Cammie. But Karen's mother was up in one bedroom. Karen was in the other bedroom. And Kyle said, "Don't worry about it. They'll get better. They're sick, but we're gonna have fun. We're gonna go to Disneyland. They're not gonna go, but we're gonna have fun." And so before Thanksgiving, we went to Disneyland. He had Kent up on his shoulders. He was 4. Karina was 2. And we got to Disneyland. Kyle had very short legs, but boy could they go. We couldn't even keep up to him. Max and I he was just like this, just going. And when we went, I remember this particularly, when we went up on the Matterhorn, they sat right in front of us, and I remember the conversation very, very much. It was like, okay, when the big bear or whatever it was came out and just kind of scared you, all these kind of spooky things on that. I can remember Kent saying to, "Gee, Dad, this ought to go in our spook alley. We're going to have really a lot of fun in our spook alley next Halloween." They'd already had. But Kyle, that was another thing. Halloween was his big, big moment. Much more than Christmas. Christmas was a special moment, but Halloween was, no one ever dared come to Kyle's house unless they were adult. I mean, pretty good large kids. It would scare them to death. He would, probably Karen told you this, but he would put out, this one year he had like a coffin, cadavers in there. He had these things, the cadaver would come up, fly up, you know, and he would come, and of course the whole house was like a spook alley. And those kids, you know, regardless of how little, they weren't scared about it anything because they were doing it with Dad. They were building this fun thing to scare the big kids. So Halloween was his big, big day. Now another thing, while we on that trip, oh, this is another thing I got to tell you. While we were on that trip, we wanted to go. We used to live in California when we were in the Marines, and so we had some friends down there. So I felt guilty leaving our kids, but we said, "Would you care if we went down to Vista by Oceanside and see some of our friends and maybe stay overnight?" Oh, heavens no, no. And Kyle, he loved to wear his robe. And his robe would come to about right here, and his garments would come to about right here, or somewhere like this. Maybe his robe was up here. His garments always hung below his robe. And those little feet just running around the house. He was one that, on Thanksgiving, he had to see that the turkey got made. He was a turkey maker. He always liked to make things nicer and easier for Karen. And and like I said, she was sick that Thanksgiving, and we had to go to the beach. Now, after we'd been there, we had to go to the beach and all these different things. But anyway, we did go to Vista. We came back from Vista, and I said, oh, Kyle, he was running around and he was vacuuming the floor and everything before we went to the beach, and had his turkey all going, and everything was going to be perfect for Thanksgiving. And the kids were running around, and I said, oh, Kyle, we're so sorry. We shouldn't have left these kids. It was just too much. How's Karen? Oh, she's still sick, but she's going to get okay. And, you know, she's up there, and she's fine. But anyway, he was still running around in his robe. I remember that so, and his garments hanging below, and I felt so guilty because I'd left him with my kids. He said, they're kind of all getting sick, but he said, I went down there and I just wiped out that drugstore, brought all this stuff, and just told them, lined them up and give them all their pills or their whatever, and they're going to be fine. We're going to have fun at Thanksgiving, you know. That's just how he was. And so we did. First thing, we were out calving, and I was helping Max, and it was in the winter time. I mean, we still had snow in March. And Lene came out, and she kept calling me, Grandma needs to talk to you right now. She's got to talk to you. And I said, I can't do it. Well, anyway, I finally got in there, and when Mother told me what had happened, I was so devastated, because Kyle was my person that, anytime, it seemed as an adult, anytime he could feel my need. If I would have a down day, he would call me up and just cheer me up. And I said, how did you know I needed to call today? I just knew it. I was so devastated, and then I thought back also, 6 weeks before that we were to Hal's little grandson's funeral. And Karen didn't come. This was in Hagerman, Idaho. And we went out to the funeral, and it was a newborn baby. He had birth defects. And Kyle was telling me at that time, this is what I was thinking about, he was telling me at that time his urgency to get things done, and how he could sleep on 3 hours, and how he could do this and this and this, this and this and this. Everything was organized, and But also, what hit me too was what we found out, what he wrote in his journal on the way going back from the funeral. And maybe Karen has told you this, but he had written in his journal that he realized and found out that day what the purpose of life was, because he saw that child standing behind the casket as an adult. And he had written that down. And why he brought his journal, I don't know, because he just flew in and flew back. But that's the things he'd written. So that really hit me, but I just thought, the dearest friend, it was very devastating for me. I was close to Kyle. One of the things that we used to do another thing that we did as a teenager, and this kind of hit me too, is as a teenager when I was dating my dates, because Kyle was so likable, and my date would say, oh, let's just take Kyle with us and play like he's our little boy. He's so cute. Let's just take him along. And I thought, do we have to? But anyway, all these things started flooding through my mind. But I just couldn't hardly believe it. And I think he died on the 17th of March. And my birthday was on the 21st of March, and I was 45. And we got there the day he was buried because we had car trouble. And when I got into the house, all I could see was Kyle running around in his bathrobe with those, just getting ready for Thanksgiving, getting ready to go to Disneyland, getting ready to do all these fun things. And the first thing that anyone said to me was, Hal came up and he says, Karen wants us to sing Oh My Father. I said, there's no way I can sing Oh My Father, as a family. And I was having such an emotional problem about it. And Hal just took me in a room and he pinned me up to the wall. And he said, looked me straight in the eyes, and he said, Kyle's right here. He's here today. Now you just get with the program. This is his graduation. He doesn't like blubbering. He likes fun. Now this is his graduation, so we have to shape it up. He said, you will sing. And so I practiced and I squeaked, but when we went over to where the viewing was the last rites before we closed the casket and had the prayer, I looked down into that casket and saw my brother for the first time. And the thought came to me, just the voice, I am not here anymore. I am ascended. And be of good cheer. Get on with your life. It was like a healing in my wings. But, and then of course the funeral was like a state conference. And I've never seen so many young people in all my life. But I feel like when I heard that, and it was like a piece of me, just like my right arm had fallen off, chopped off. But I have felt his presence many, many more times. And you must interview Hal, because Hal can tell you about his Appalachian Trail, and Kyle was with him on that Appalachian Trail, especially that last 1,000 miles or whatever it was. He had to go it alone, and he will tell you a lot of things. See, I didn't ski at that time. Kyle was a skier, and so I didn't do any of those things, but I did a lot of things as a family. The last time they came to our house was, I think it was in November, Thanksgiving time, and I've got pictures of that. And I've got a picture, I don't know whether you have anything like this, but I have a picture of standing in St. John with Kyle right down there, and I'm standing right by him. And we've also got a movie of Kyle as a little boy. It's not too much of it. But Mother was always particular how the kids looked. So if one hair was out of place, she was always, spitting it down, or whatever it had to be. It had to be perfect. That really bothered him. He didn't like to do that. Oh, and there's one other thing I got to tell you. Kyle had a horrible time. He was carefree. And I think when Karen came into his life, it was the best thing that ever happened. Kyle did not have the knowledge to know how to save, or maybe he did as he grew up, but Karen was the thing that she was very disciplined. If you're going to get somewhere in life, you've got to save, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to plan and work. Kyle was like this free bird. Mother would always give him and Hal some money, and I remember this really. Maybe they'd have 10 cents. Hal would always come back with 5 or 6 at least. Kyle never ever came back with a dime, with anything. Never. Didn't matter if it was $1 or what it was. He had to spend it all. That was it. It was just, so Karen was the best thing that ever happened to him. As far as, I can remember going to Karen's house, and in those hard times, those beginning years, you never left a light on anywhere. If you did, you got told. The lights had to go out. This was energy. This was light bills. You saved energy. And so, and I love Karen like my own sister. And I don't know whether I can tell you anything else or not. He was just so intertwined in my life. It was, even though we were 10 years apart, he was so intertwined. He was so easy to love. He was a lovable person. I remember in the funeral, when they got married, I don't know whether they told you this or not, but when they got married, Karen and Kyle, I think Karen was about this much taller than Kyle, so he had to wear build-up shoes. But after they got married, it didn't really mean that much. But see, my grandma and Grandpa Lundberg were like this. Both of them were really, really like this. So there was a lot of comparison in those two. I don't know. Kyle has left a real legacy, I think, a real legacy for all of us. He had a positive outlook on life. And then he learned to manage, and he learned to plan, and he learned in like this sleeping thing. He said, you just learn to sleep fast. You can make it on 3 hours. And I asked him how. Well, you just go under. You just focus on it. You just go under and you forget all this turning over and all these kind of things. And so everything seemed like he had an urgency. And I do think the day he died, when he got on the other side, he just looked around. I think it was as big a shock to him as it was to us, because he had things he needed to do. And his family, and Karen always said, or Kyle always said, Karen always said, I will raise the kids I will be responsible for when they get teenagers. You're the one that really relates to a teenager. And you see what happens. So sometimes we don't always get what we want. But in Kyle's death, I think we've all grown. I've tried to take a lot of his good, because he was such a fun-loving person. I've tried to be that way myself. I've tried to incorporate that, to have children love me, to know who I am, make an impression upon them, and so forth. Not meaning that I'm somebody special, but Kyle was an unforgettable person. My thinking, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it was his time to go. I think why Heavenly Father took him is because of what I saw at the funeral, I heard at the funeral. He was so busy trying to get these boys prepared to go, and this is when the drugs came, and these boys that he was working with had been into these drugs, and that's why, one of the reasons why he forgot his equipment. So he had to get other equipment because he was so into helping these kids. Every one of those kids have turned their lives around. Every one of them been through the temple. Every one of them, I think, the testimony meeting that they had, that lasted 3 hours, and those kids standing up and bearing their testimony. The writing to Karen, to Brother Hess, I will turn my life around. I think that was part of the reason, but I think the Lord had a great purpose. And in doing this, I also feel very, very strong that Karen has become much greater than she probably ever thought she could be, for the simple reason she depended on Kyle for everything. Not the managing, but he was such a helper. She didn't have to worry about these things because Kyle would take care of it. Kyle kind of oversaw all these kinds of things, which sometimes different spouses don't do. And so she had to learn how to become this. Kent had to learn how to become the man of the house. I mean, and Karen, one of the things that I just give praise for is when Kyle died, and that wetsuit, and how Karen could take those little kids, and Kurt wanted to do all these things that his dad did, and could go up and get a motorhome and take those kids and let them ski and let them snorkel and let them do all those things and put a wetsuit on, those boys. I don't think I could have done that, but then I think none of us really know what our potential is until so there was growth on both sides. I think that was, I will never know the whole reason why he died. But I think the way they told it, and you probably heard this too, the way they told it is like when he was walking out into the water, this was told in the funeral, he would turn and wave and smile and walk a little farther and turn and wave and smile like it was his last goodbyes. I don't think he knew that. But he was so excited about getting in there and doing what he loved to do, and he finally had the ultimate, what he wanted, to get all those kids here, and they were doing it. And some of those kids that were to the funeral were to this little boy's funeral, Karen told me. And when Kurt told me, he said, I was overwhelmed, when he and then when hearing the funeral, But he also told me over the phone, he said I was overwhelmed by how all the people have been so good and what they've done and everything. And I said, Kurt, that doesn't even surprise me at all. I said, when this happened, look how long Kyle's been gone, 29 years this year that Kyle had been gone. And he is as well known to people as he ever was, because his legacy has never quit. His, having to raise Kirk and Kent and all these kids and even the girls has just kept him alive. Because he was a memorable person, they remember what he did. They have helped raise Karen's kids. I just think that's, he made a, like I said, you ask my kids, I haven't seen them, they were pretty young when he died. My kids love Kyle today as much as they loved him then. They have nothing but good things. They remember him totally. I mean, he's just a memorable person. He made a difference in people's lives. You were special and you were important to them, just like he loved little children. He took each one of them, and they'll never forget him, because he just didn't take just a group. He got on a one-on-one, and he did that with my kids. And I remember one thing that was so cute. When Lori got married, my daughter Lori got married, Kyle was the MTC. I mean, he was the in charge, and that was just before he died. I mean, well, they got married the year before he died. Got married in June, and he died the next March. Anyway, Kyle got up, and one of the things that he said, and here was at her wedding reception, Lori liked to do the pig squeal. She always did that. She just kind of, I can't even do it, but anyway, she sounded like a bunch of little pigs squealing. So Kyle got up there and he told a bunch of stuff, and then he said, and the next thing on the program, Lori will be glad to give her little pig squeal. And here she is in her wedding dress coming up the front, and I really don't want to do this. He said, oh, you can do it. And so she gives the pig squeal. She'll never forget that as long as she lives. Never. And we have a video of that. Not of her doing the pig squeal, but I mean, we've got some pictures of that. But he didn't like to embarrass people, but I don't know, he had a way about it. He just had a way about it. Well, we've been very, very involved with Karen's family, because I'll tell you why we've been involved. Karen made up her mind from day one that her kids were going to know Kyle's family and stay connected. She did everything. She came up in snowstorms. She came up with motorhomes and snowstorms and all kinds of things. She had to put up with Kent going home. He was a reptile collector and a bug collector and all this stuff. One time she left our place and she told me, she said, oh, I was driving down the road and she said, all of a sudden a snake was coming up, onto her steering wheel or up somewhere by her, and she said she just about lost it. This was Kent. She put up with so much stuff with Kent, I can't believe it. I mean, she wanted him to be able to live. She wanted him to be able to experience things, because that's how Kyle did. That's why I think her kids, she has been the best mother and the best father to those kids. I'm sure Kyle, many, many times, has just smiled down, and I can't even imagine the reunion with that little child. Because, you know, you think if you love someone so much, and you could see them, but you can't even hold them, you can't even really communicate with them. But this is one of the reasons why she's given Karen, or she's given her kids every opportunity. She's saved, she's worked, the Lord's blessed her. I remember one time, she'd bring the kids to reunions. I remember one time she has an allergy to bees, bee stings, terrible allergy. Shortly after Kyle died, Kristen was small, and she was the oldest one, Kirk. But anyway, they came up to a big family reunion on the Lundberg side. It was in Logan area. And I think it was Kristen running up the road, running up to us. Karen was down their motorhome or something, and they said, "You've got to come quick! You got to come quick! Our mom's dying!" She got stung by a bee while she was there, and her throat was all swelling up. Well, they had lost their father. Now here she's going. They said, and she had the stuff, but she couldn't give it. She just was so bad she couldn't give herself. So we happened to have two dentists there, my cousins, and they went running down there, and they saved her life. And Kirk lost all of his front teeth because doing crazy things, He was out there and had a terrible bicycle accident. Lost those out. She had to pay for that. I mean, she's had a lot of different things happen to her. So it was not, okay, Kyle's dead. Now everything is going to be smooth sailing with your kids and everything else. She's had all the ups and downs that any parent would have. And she's still gone through some ups and downs. But she's learned how to get through them much more, So I think her kids are wonderful. I think they've turned out really, really, of course we're hoping for a couple more blessings, but but anyway, they're wonderful kids. I'm just grateful that Kyle was my brother. I'm grateful that I had the chance to be his sister. I knew he loved me. I'm grateful that I have his heritage. And I'm grateful that Karen has been a part of our lives, because you know what? She could have just cut us right out. Being clear in California, it could have got less and less and less. But because we've gone down to testimonials and weddings and everything, we know them. And that's why those kids felt like they had, and Karen had to come up to Lori's daughter's wedding, because Karen insisted the kids wanted to get our daughter's kids down there, so that's where they got really close. So Nicolette and Salita went down and that connection really got going. So there's a love, and I'm just very grateful to be a part of this family. I'm grateful to be a member of the church, and for Families Are Forever, and for the knowledge that we have, and I can't wait to see my brother again and be a part of that. And I don't know that I have anything else. I probably think of more, but he was just,
that's good. He
was just a really wonderful, wonderful person, and I think we've all got a lot to live up to. And with your children, I hope that they will really, some way you can really make it come alive for them as they grow to what a wonderful grandfather they had.